All right, everybody, back. It's been about a week, a little bit over a week since uh, voting period ended, and I made a prediction before. I made a statement before about when this was over, I would make up my mind about the validity of these VOTESs. So it took a couple of states over a week to tally all their votes. Arizona and Nevada, particularly, took forever and a day. You would think that in the year that we're in and what everything else is, that there'd be a system that gets this done a little bit faster than a week of time to count states with some of the lowest populations votes. Just saying. Regardless, their votes have come in, and generally, the Republicans didn't do very well. Generally, they lost many races across the country. There were a few pickups here and there that were pretty minor. They're saying at this point that the House was taken by the Republicans, but like by one person, when there was predicted to be 20 plus possibly. The fact that those states that took so long to vote or took so long to report their votes was very telling, I thought. Like in the past, those states, well, last year we know that our last election, the Arizona was pretty slow, as was Nevada as well. But that's only been recent few elections. Before that, they were pretty quick to put their numbers out. I remember when you knew the night of, before midnight. You know, the poll if you're on the West Coast, the polls had closed, 4 hours earlier when you start getting the reports in from New York and Maine and Vermont and all those places like that. And then so you would start getting those results, and if you're on the West Coast, the polls close at 7, and so you already know a lot of times the outcomes of some of the races in the Eastern Coast already by that point. And they kind of changed it a little bit over the time by not really did it so early or not until the polls closed on the West Coast as well, to supposedly prevent people from not voting, because it was already they knew the outcome of back east, and somehow that was going to affect if they're going to vote here or not vote or whatever they say. And so they did that, but generally by the end of the night, would it be like midnight on the West Coast and 4 a.m. on the East Coast, it was pretty much settled. There was very few races that would be going longer than that, and so you knew when you went to bed at midnight on the West Coast pretty much who the president was and who the senators and House of Reps are and all that kind of stuff. Maybe the local races, maybe not so much all totally set in stone at that point, but for the big races, then they started doing this projection stuff, and they would project this in the major media. Would project that so and so is going to win already, and they would do it before the polls even closed, and that was controversial and all this stuff. And you're like, and then you start seeing how they automatically polls aren't even closed on the West Coast, and they're already calling winners for like Oregon, Washington State, California State, like just a given. They're going to be blue states, and like just a given Texas was going to be a red state. And then for years they started purple state things. And I remember when Bush was elected, and it was Florida. It was a complete fiasco place. That was where all the problems were. And if you all remember, like the hanging Chads thing, and they actually went to the Supreme Court to get the president on that whole thing, and that was way over a week. Of course, that thing was a fiasco. It was apparently now Florida's gotten their act together, or they appeared to have so, and I guess this election is the first time they're saying that Florida is the first time since the Reconstruction, which was after the Civil War, that Florida had no Democratic party representatives at all in any type of state office or federal office. So there was they completely went the other way on Democrats there. Where just a few years ago, Miami-Dade area was like the big blue bastion inside of Florida that they could count on every time for their votes. I think over the years the Democrats have strayed along and really alienated a lot of the Cuban people that were in that area by what their they lived under that kind of a fascist type shit in Cuba, and that's why they came here, is to escape that. And now when they see the party, the Democrats are supposed to be all about the people and all that, and they're doing exactly the opposite of what they're supposed to be about. I think that it alienated the Cubans population pretty hard there, and the Democrats made a mistake of thinking that Hispanic or Latino people are all about welfare handouts, and they're not. They ignored the fact that they're a majority of Catholics with strong family values and strong family ties. So, and the Democrats are all about tearing apart families and anti-religion and slavery, more or less. Don't forget they were this party of slavery. They've tried to, and in some cases have been successful in making people believe that they're the opposite of the slavery party. But look in your history and you'll find the truth of the matter. But truth is very subjective. I might add that too. But overall, I'd say the whole thing was there was a lot of things that are just, considering exit polls of some of these places of the people coming out after the polling and saying that they the polling suggested that 70% of the people were not happy with the current president's policies and the current administration's plans and whatnot. So 75% is supposed to come out of the exit polls saying that, yet they still held the House or the majority of the Senate, and a lot of other races, mayors and other such things were held by the Democrats, even though the exit polls showed higher numbers of anti-democratic voters. But yet somehow they had to be able to keep, a lot of races are very close too, which is suspicious to me. It's just when so many people talk about how they're a negative thing, but then the votes coming down to 1,000 votes here and a couple thousand over there, and have to take all these days to count, and it makes me very suspicious of the whole system and what's going on with it, and a lot of stories that you hear that just don't seem right to me, and some don't seem like there should be legal things that are legal, but they shouldn't be, ways that are being voted. And some things that third world countries do better. It's why is it we could, less than 20 years ago, we could have an election and everybody knew it by the end of the night what the outcome was, but now 20 years later we are waiting a week. Anybody should see that there's a problem with that, and should not accept that. That's an issue. That's obviously an issue, whether, I don't care what side of the party you're on. Because if you're not on the right side this time, you think, then you don't see the voting going the way you think it's going to be, and then you're on the other side the next time. Like I've said before, it's both wings from the same bird. It's all garbage. It's not. It's just to make you feel like you got some kind of a say in it when you really don't. And I think that they, it's a distraction. It's a control mechanism. It's taking you and making you think that you got power or you got some kind of a ability to choose. That's what it's about, is ability to choose what your tyranny might be, I guess. And you want a fascism heavy or fascism light, kind of, and they go back and forth like this. Because it's not right. It's not right. And so I'm going to just say now, then my opinion, because this last one, and the way that they played it, just down the middle. I mean, you can't get it any more like that than they've done. I mean, they showed their hands like they always do. I mean, in Pennsylvania, they ran a person that had a stroke just a few months ago, who was really has mental challenges. Let's put it that way. He doesn't speak very well and has trouble forming words and following along with the narrative or whatever that's being talked about. And he was running against he was a Democrat and running against Dr. Mehmet Oz, who's a TV doctor made famous by Oprah Winfrey. He's a very liberal person, not even from Pennsylvania, really. So he's trying to convince the Pennsylvanians to pick him, but it's to the point where if truly and legitimately the people of Pittsburgh picked the stroke victim over Mehmet Oz, then you just know that's a bad sign either way. For either side, that's not good. So when you see that kind of stuff happen, and when all the rest of the culture around is talking about this, everybody being equal and all this kind of garbage, and then of course you look at the current administration, the head of that, Mr. Biden, a man who certainly has Alzheimer's. And other odd behaviors that he has been known to do, and it makes you wonder about maybe they did really elect this guy. I mean, because if they the programming is deep. It really is. I mean, to this day, it's it's been well over months that the whole C to the V thing was basically kind of faded away. They used it for what they needed to use it for. But yet I still see people going around with their little face thing on and little face panties and it's like, you'd think that you'd walk into a building or something and you'd look around and see that, well, nobody else is doing that and I don't have to do this or something. Or, I've seen them in their car still, alone in their car, driving down the road or walking down the street, sidewalk, here and there. And I want to just say, hey, did you know that you don't have to do that anymore? Or it's like I say, like Star Wars, the programming is strong with this one. The Force is strong in this one. That's what I think of it. The programming is strong with this one, and they just, you could tell these people anything, and they're gonna just buy it hook, line, and sinker, and keep doing it too, because they're very afraid that they might, the boogeyman might get them. If they don't have the piece of paper on their face. I heard some other person say it's amazing that if we only knew, 100 years ago or 200 years ago or whenever, that you could just put a piece of paper over your face and you were safe from all these things, then we would never have had any of these past medical problems. Whatever they past plagues, whatever. Just a piece of paper, save you, and social distancing, yeah, because you got to stay away from people 6 feet, Sure. Anyway, that's another topic altogether, which we all know that's forbidden territory to discuss that, but that's gone away for the most part. They've now they've got all these things going on about talking about problems that might have caused from some of the things that were pushed to be to protect you from that thing, which probably didn't. And now lots of people have had physical problems from taking that thing that was supposed to protect you. And lots of people that shouldn't get problems with their system blood flow and all that kind of stuff. That they had people that are like very young having problems with their blood flow and organs in their body failing all of a sudden, and just odd things like that, and from getting the thing that they wanted you to get. So, I didn't get that thing, and I would never do that. I won't take anything from them anymore. I think that, I believe I got flu shots in the past, and I never got the flu. And I've had the flu many times when I was younger. I mean, it's one that everybody has, right? I mean, you've got colds. We've all got colds. We've all got the flu. We've all got whatever things here. Chicken pox. Probably all of us have ever had that. Even if you get the vaccine for that, you probably got it at some point. I didn't get chicken pox until I was older, and that was really sucked. I got it when I was 18, and that was, I wish more that my parents would have exposed me to it when I was younger, and because I got the vaccine like everybody did probably, and went to school, had to go to to go to school. They had to have that. I was one of the people that got that one vaccine that had like the 6 shots, and you got the little circle thing on your arm, whatever the small POX shot, supposedly, and it was supposed to have, I don't know what all was in that thing, but when it comes to these diseases and what a virus, I've never really got any of the bad stuff. Because I got the chickenpox when I was 18, which really sucked bad. It was painful, unpleasant, and just it was really unpleasant. The itching and the constant sores and whatnot that are caused by it. It's just everywhere on your body, and yeah, you don't want that. Much rather have it younger and you forget about it, and one of those deals. And not to live through it when you're 18, they say it could make you sterile and all that and all this, well, I mean, it didn't do that for me, but I suppose, there's anything can happen with this thing. But, I probably put a booster to that later on, and now they have you can get shingles in older life if you had that. So, there's always these, side effects, even 3 years later. And those are kind of vaccines that you could, I would say, trust to a certain extent. And like I said, I've gotten the flu vaccine several times, and when I got the flu vaccine, I never got the flu that year. I was lucky to have the whatever batch they picked with the right one that was coming up for whatever mutations that were in it. So I never got the flu, and when I had the vaccine, and for many years, like I got the vaccine that was available and free and everything through my work. Then now this thing came along, and I'm just no way I'm getting that thing, and I'm not going to get the flu thing again ever either, because they pushed this other thing way too hard that I don't trust them to just substitute one thing for another. I'm not surprised. When I was just before this thing, I got sick, a prostate problem, just basically in the midst of this whole thing going on. I had to go to the hospital and have surgery and everything, and when times they were turning people away and for elective surgeries and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a whole other story. I was in the hospital, and when they were saying all this stuff about what's going on in the hospitals, and that's a different story. I won't go into right now. Let's just say that, of course, the mainstream media and what they're saying and what was the truth in the hospitals were two different things. I'll say that much. Anyway, after the surgery and all this stuff, because my creatinine levels were so high from the toxic buildup in my body, they put me on dialysis to try to bring the creatinine levels down, because I was like really high in what the creatinine levels were when I went in there, because I'd been neglectful of my health and whatnot, and I had pushed it too far, and I was really sick. So when I was in that dialysis unit, they're giving me all kinds of stuff in there, and because mainly people that are in dialysis are elderly people, because their kidneys are failing or they have some kind of medical issue, but for the most, they have some alcoholics or whatever. But for the most part, they what I seen was it was elderly people. And to me, I didn't definitely, they're definitely within at least 20 plus years older than I am, kind of thing. So, and no, it was that's you don't ever want to do that dialysis, whatever you want. Just for for just a warning, if you ever have prostate problems of any kind, go to the doctor. Don't fuck around. You don't want that. You don't want to have your kidneys in bad shape. And you have to have dialysis. Uh, some people will be like almost every day, and they were putting me on it for was it 3 days a week, and it sucks. You have to sit in that. You have to go in there for a couple of hours, basically, 3 days a week or whatever. Less probably time if you go more days. But there wasn't a day that I went to that thing that I didn't just get a raging headache after it was over and everything. And it's just it's not fun in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, so but they because you're around all these other patients, and because of the whole CV crap that was going on, you had to wear a mask the whole time in there. So you're breathing your own oxygen thing, and then they're constantly doing tests, taking your blood and this and that. I mean, all the time, urine as well. So, I mean, they're just knowing everything you're doing, and they're tracking it and for the creatine to see. And but I got a flu shot when I was in there, just as it's what they do. And for all these old people, they give them all these whatever kind of things you're supposed to get. When they came to giving when those vaccines for the CV started coming around, they were asking if you want to take them, and I said no way. But then they did have the flu shot, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll take the flu shot, not a problem. I've had it many times, not really worried about it. But this flu shot, I got it, and nothing, no problem, just like always, a little soreness at the injection site, and that was it. But a week later, at that injection site, my arm just was hurting so badly. It was so uncomfortable, and so it felt like I'd just been pounded in the arm with a bat or something. It was just throbbing, hurting, pain, and I've never had any kind of a feeling. And this was a week after the shot, and then for like 2 weeks, it felt like I had been pounded in the arm and just severely tight. The feeling when the shot, I often get just after a shot, it's like a soreness, that kind of thing. But it was like for 2 weeks I had that soreness in my arm. I've never had that happen ever before with any kind of vaccination. And I was like, well, I don't know what's up with that. So and I was tested for the CV several times, which I never got it. So it wasn't like it wasn't like there was nothing like that going on that I was. But it was something else that was it was just out of place for what I've ever dealt with that before. So it made me think about that. What could they possibly do whatever they want and say it's something, it's not another thing, or whatever. So anyway, that was my saying why I'm not going to do that. And so now back to elections, because I didn't finish that statement. Is yeah, I'm not gonna participate in that anymore. It's already known what's going to happen in advance by who knows how long. I mean, who knows how long it could be. It could be a long time, years and years, as they plan this stuff out and put everything in place for it. And the way these controllers do things, it's long term. That's the way they do things, and they're incrementalist, and people don't see the big picture over time. I noticed the incrementalism thing years and years ago. Like with a big example was smoking. And anybody that knows it. You used to be able to smoke in anywhere, pretty much, your restaurants and on airplanes, on buses, whatever, everywhere. Nobody cared. And you could always use that excuse to people, that, oh, well, I'm not hurting anybody but myself. So, that was one of the things that they had to overcome, basically, because they said all the time, they put warnings on everything, and they'd always tell people, don't smoke, it's bad for your health and whatnot. But the people could always say, oh, well, I'm just only hurting myself. So So, they didn't have the anti-smoker people didn't have much to say after that. So they had to come up with something to combat that, and that was secondhand smoke. So once they started that secondhand smoke thing, well, then it was no longer just hurting you. And I saw that right away. It was plain as day. That was a tactic to use. So first they had the secondhand smoke, and they started bringing forth all these people who, oh, he never smoked, but yet he got lung cancer, and they died of it before the person smoked, and la 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 la, all this garbage, and studies and this and that and all that. So, and then they incrementally started saying, oh well, you can't smoke on the airplanes, it's a closed area, and so can't do that. And the bus is the same thing, and the freaking then they started using things to raise the age, and of course they started pushing the prices. Then they've had the big tobacco trials, where they basically made the tobacco companies admit that they were pushing the product and whatever, and the media advertising at the time was there. Of course, that they were pushing the product, which is only, hey, only obvious to do. I mean, imagine if it be a tobacco bearing. I mean, you got a product that's addictive and it's legal to sell it, and you're not going to do that? I mean, who isn't going to do that? Of course they are. And they got that big settlement and all that stuff. But that was all just a slap on the wrist. The same people that were prosecuting them. You got to remember, these are people that are from Kentucky and Louisiana and Alabama and these big states that produce tobacco. And you got the same senators and whatnot up there saying, oh yeah, you guys are producing a toxic, deadly chemical, and so now you got to pay for all this anti-smoking propaganda to go to schools and hospitals and whatnot, and billions of dollars, who knows what it was. At the time, it was like one of the hugest settlements of any corporation, and I can't remember exactly what it was. Massive, but they're still there. They just raise the prices, and everybody the same people that are smoking and just pay more for the cigarettes. I mean, that's the way it is, and they're not going to stop that kind of thing, and they don't want to, because they're making tax money off of it hugely. That's the whole, that's the whole double-sided scam of the government, is to tax and regulate something and act like they're saving you, but they're actually just pocketing the money and lining their own whatever with it, and there's the same thing with the green crap now. This save the planet bullshit. All this Green New Deal is making you feel like you're bad for the planet and you need to help the planet and all this and that, and it's all garbage. They're charging you they're taxing you to live in your own planet, on your own planet, under your own place, whatever you want to call it, and make you feel bad about it. So you got to pay for it. This carbon taxes and carbon footprints and all this nonsense, and they've worked their way in through the magic of their media and their science and whatever to make you think that you're damaging the planet and it's your fault. And so for you to have the privilege to continue doing what you're doing, basically, you got to pay more. They don't care about the planet in the slightest. They care about pocketing money. They care about the grift. They care about making you feel bad for the next thing that comes along, so you can be grifted again and distracted from what you really need to worry about. Their God is not did not make the world so that we could destroy it. It's impossible. We cannot affect this world. There's nothing we could do to destroy this planet. We didn't. We couldn't pollute it enough. We know that, just going back in history, that and looking at certain things, that like the Sahara Desert was not always a desert. We know that, and South American continent was not always a tropical rainforest. And there were cities all over it, and we've seen it on LiDAR, and you can see the outlines and structures buried beneath the jungle. So we know it wasn't always covered in trees. When they were telling us we're going to burn the rainforest down, it's going to end the world, and that's lies. We're going to. In the Bible, it says that God made the seas to come onto or to bound the boundaries onto the land. They couldn't go past those boundaries. They are what they are. There's basically, when God made the planet, He made this much water and this much planet, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it planet, whatever. Doesn't matter. But God made the amount of water that's on it, and it is never going to change. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't reappear as more. It doesn't increase, decrease, whatever. It doesn't. It's a closed system. The amount of water that when you were born here is still here. The amount of water that when Moses was born is still here. It hasn't changed. We may go through cycles where it more ice fills is more icy areas than on frozen waters, liquid water. The oxygen in the air, that's all water. It's all the same amount of the system, and it's balanced perfectly. It's never going. There may be cycles to things. They may have cold times and may have warm times, and but overall, the cities, for the most part on the west coast and whatever, have not raised or lowered their water levels by very much over all this time. There are, rivers can go dry. There could have been areas that were had something under them, or had something there, and then the rivers were higher water content was there and whatever. But a lot of these things that where the water is increased in areas is from human activity. We can definitely block rivers and dam up things and cause back flooding behind it and cover archaeological sites or things from the past and whatnot. So a lot of times they do that intentionally and hide things that way. And then you have these dry periods, and those things will pop up out of the thing, and and they're like, oh well, yeah, that was there. We just didn't mention it to nobody, and so that does happen. But in the overall general sense, and they say, oh, the ice is going to melt, and the coastal cities will be underwater by X amount of whatever. That's not going to happen. It's not. I mean, the beaches may come up a little bit. That's it's not going to flood all the way. There are places that, like, when you have a storm like Louisiana or any of these low-lying places, yeah, they're going to get some problems from the water, obviously. But how long have they been at sea level? I mean, there's things out like in Louisiana and Yucatan Peninsula and stuff like that. There's evidence that there's been cities or whatever right on the coastline for hundreds and hundreds of years, and we know of. Even going back, they try to fit them into the narrative, but like in Louisiana and everything, that their cities have been there longer than America has been there. There's another part of the whole story that's left out of the actual founding of America and all that stuff. We kind of know now that there's a different story than what we're actually, the whole Columbus story is not really what happened. There was a lot of different families, monarchies, royalty from France and Germany and Europe, of course, and they all had their little trading posts in the Americas, and there's all across the coastal areas. Spain, and they go back further than 1492, and there's a lot of things about like the indigenous people that were here that are not exactly what you think they are according to the history books, and how long they were here is definitely highly debatable, and there's a lot of evidence that they've been here for a while, way longer than 1492, and a lot of things that were never taught in school, like star forts, for instance, are just everywhere. And you'd think that'd be something that, being that they are everywhere, that you'd be taught about them. And that, to me, that star forts, when I first heard about them, they've hidden them away in one way by calling them bastion forts, and they attributed them to the Spanish mostly, and but they basically were here before the Spanish as well. So, and they're all over the world. There's tons of these things. I mean, thousands of them, and you would think as many as there are around, and how obvious that they are. They're big star-looking things of different types of stars, pointed, whatnot, and geometrical shapes of them. And you would kind of think that, oh, these are things like that. That'd be one of the things they teach you in school about so-and-so had this and so-and-so did that, and and they built these kind of things, but they just don't even tell you about them at all. At all. Do you anybody remember talking about star forts? You might have heard something about a bastion fort, and then they started attributing these bastion forts to the Civil War. There's all the ones like around Washington, Chesapeake Bay, the East Coast. There's quite a few, and off the coast of Florida. There's ones, and in Florida, and right off a bunch. And so and you get stories of all those. They were built during the Civil War. And then, of course, the other ones were built, other areas were built by the Spanish, supposedly, to stop, whoever, the British from coming here. But the thing is, two different time periods by a long way, different situations, but they're the same kind of fort. So, and then they look, take one day and go look what the Statue of Liberty sits upon. Look at the bottom of it, and not the pedestal of the statue, but beneath the pedestal. That's called Fort Wood, and it's the Star Fort, and it's been there for who knows how long. It's hidden right in plain sight. Nobody ever mentioned. You never hear nothing about it when you talk about the Statue of Liberty. That is not something they go, oh, and by the way, it's sitting on this Star Fort that's been there since 1700s or sometime, whenever they made up the number around. But they don't tell you about that. I just tell you about the wonderful Statue of Liberty and the pedestal. That's what got it to be here, because they had this thing with having to buy it from, of course the story, it was given to us by France, for the Independence Day thing, and that's a nonsense story. It's nonsense. But yeah, there's Star Fort underneath of it. So I mean, you couldn't. How much more in plain sight can you hide something? And literally, I didn't even see it until I watched another video about how a few years back, and there it was. I mean, it's been there the whole time, of course, but you don't see it. It's hidden in plain sight. And there's Star Forts, like I said, all over the place in North America. And when they try to put it in a narrative now, and there's ones that they try to wipe out and make disappear basically from the landscape, because they don't fit the narrative. They don't fit the what supposedly was going on there at the supposed time that these things were supposedly built. There's one out in off the coast of Florida in the Gulf of Mexico, kind of, and it's got like 16 million bricks, red bricks in it, and it's built at a time that it's like, really, how in the hell did they get 16 million red bricks out into this area of the ocean at the time they're saying they built it? Which is, you'd have a tough time getting that out there today. But it was 18 something or other, Civil War type time, which is even hard to believe. But the real reality of it is, it was probably done before that. So it predates the Civil War. And how did they get? Who made the bricks? Who got them out there? How'd they get them out there? How'd they build this thing on this? I mean, very minor. Is it a man-made island? I don't know. It's whatever. It's really strange, and we might look into that. As I can't think of the name of the fort right off my top of my head at the moment. But yeah, it's right off the coast of Florida in that area, and it's a national park now, like most of these things are. But it's to me, it's almost a Mandela effect, because it just popped into reality, really. I mean, one day they never heard of it, and then the next day all of a sudden, Star Forts everywhere. And you go and kind of look at the videos on YouTube and whatnot, that it's like all of a sudden everybody started talking about Star Forts, and they're everywhere. And it was like, what the heck is this? And so it seems like Tartaria to me. It's like, how did I miss this whole country that was supposedly existed in our past? But you know, at the same time, we know they hide the past, and they lie to us about everything, and so, and as you know, at a certain point, you've got Google Earth now, and these things you can't hide these things that they could hide in the past so easily because you know people don't go anywhere. You're not up in the sky all the time, and you can't just search every thing over the planet. But you know that at a certain point, there's going to be things seen from the air to the ground that they normally you wouldn't see. So they didn't really have to make up any excuses for these things because nobody could generally see them. It was like the NASCAR lines. How long were those there before somebody realized that those big giant pictographs were there? I mean, you have to see them from the air. That's what they tell you themselves. So it's only, and they kind of had that hidden away to this point because, you know, if you can only see it from the air, that means you can only make it from seeing it from the air. So these starports to me are almost the same thing. They're so precise and perfect, and you know, and the size of them, the magnitude of the construction of them is massive. They're massive, and for the time period they're talking about that they were supposedly built, it just doesn't jive with the regular narrative. And because a lot of times the stories are so like, oh yeah, they built it for the Civil War, which is 4 years, you know, and it takes 4 years to build this thing, and and then after it would be like operational for 8 years or something like. They're just ludicrous numbers for the time and effort to build these things would be for the time that they're actually used as a fort in some sort is that's not appropriate. I mean, you don't just build these things like that and tell them only used for 4 or 5 years or 6 years, even 10, 30 years. And these things are still there, and they're saying they're from some of them from the 1700s, from Spanish, and some of them from the 1800s, from the Civil War, and so on. But yet these things are still huge, and they're not damaged or falling down. They're in good condition for the most part. And a lot of cities they surround the cities even. They're so massive and large, and always near water, always have something to do with that. But they're not the kind of thing you just always say, oh, okay, we're done with that, we don't need that no more. They're not like that at all. So it's another one of those things that it's either like a Mandela effect that they just appeared in this reality, or that as it's also completely possible they've just been hidden and not put forward because they didn't really want to have to answer the questions of who made these and when were they made and what for and all that kind of stuff, because they don't really and they talk about 2 different time lines for the things, so that just tells you that there's more to it than just what they say. And you should investigate star forts. It's definitely a very interesting topic to look into, and it's another part of the whole waking up the truth thing that kind of got to go through everything and make your judgments on it. And it starts without that. You got to realize that the history that we've been told is not true. It's just not. It's been manipulated and changed, and we've been lied to because that's what they put us into a control box basically, and certain things don't fit the narrative to their control box, and they just don't mention it. And now they're kind of having to catch up with some of the things because now people can just look on their phone and they can see, oh, well, what's this weird shape out here? What's that about? And who made, it doesn't fit the narrative. So they've been having to kind of piece those pieces in now a little bit, and it's kind of shown their hand because almost everything that we've been taught about the founding of America and who we were and who we are and where we came from is basically not true. It's overgeneralizations and false narratives. I mean, false history, false people that have been made up that did false things that didn't happen, and they've manipulated the photographic records going back to who knows when. They probably have that photography already before they are history tells us they did. Um, they had ways of manipulating art, of course, and that's how that's how they make the masses believe. Sometimes it's art, montages, pictures that would tell a story, and people don't even think about it, and it's just, it's a narrative they put forward, and it's all been false. But they have the receipts, so to speak. They have the backup that this is a painting of this happening. This is and they supposedly photography around the 1850s or whatever, maybe a little earlier, and so that's where you start getting the narrative put together with this person did that, and here's a picture of this, and here's a picture of that, and they put these buildings in there, and they say, oh, this was built at such and such a time. This was, and hard to find any construction photos on that or anything like that. And when you think about it, all said and done, it's all manipulatable, because when the first photography was, they had the ability to do basically Photoshop, and I mean, because photography, all it is putting an image onto a plate of some sort, with, using a chemical process, and we use glass plates, which is the popular, easy way to do it, and you could combine, with the negative of that, your image you've taken, with other glass plates, and you can make it look you can make anything you want, and these people were adept at doing that. The first people that were doing photography, and it could go back way further than we think. I mean, because it tells us that the whole narrative is artificial. Because if you go back and you look and study enough of this stuff, you start finding that a lot of our historical narrative currently in the United States goes back to about 1850. Suddenly, everything starts around that time. There's other, there's little spots, incidences here and there in the 1810s, 1820s. But there's like a huge gap in this area between 1492 and the 1800s. They don't really go in a whole lot of depth of what's going on during that period. And you get little things like the Louisiana Purchase kind of pops up, and Lewis and Clark, and a little bit. But what happened? The other lower part below that was still Spanish territory at that time, and there's all these other areas that are Native American lands or whatever they are. And it's kind of a dry zone for astrohistorical facts. It's very, and no pictures, and there's not a whole lot of paintings or anything like that between those two periods. There's not in the Americas anyway. You kind of what we've been taught kind of drops back over to you get the American Revolution, of course, 1776. I mean, you get the story, and that's it. It's a story. That's John or Washington and Andrew Jackson and all those people. There's founding fathers. It's a story, and that's kind of what the history you get from that period. And so it's kind of really spotty. There's not a whole, one time the city is this big, and the next time it's 10 times as large, and they started suppose about 1850s is when you start looking at all these buildings that are huge and massive old world type buildings. They start popping, and they're all started being made, founded, just whatever at that period of time. So the narrative's kind of off, because it goes from, on one hand you have supposedly the cowboys and Indians and the westward expansion and all that stuff that's taking place at that early 1800s, and at the same time you have these big giant cities that with gigantic stone architecture and everything else. So is it little wood mining towns and prairie things like that, or is it these big cities with these giant buildings and all this advanced architecture? You get pictures from San Francisco of a city totally built out, and then there's a big fire, and then the city's totally built out again, and it's odd, very odd. And we need to remember this, that these pictures and whatnot they can be easily manipulated. And so what we're really seeing is it's manipulation. It's plain and simple. They have the ability to do it, and they had the reason to do it, and so they did it. Our history, what we think we've seen, almost every picture has been manipulated in some way. going back to, like I said, probably before the 1850s, because we could make a picture look like a drawing, and and say it was, oh, it's a drawing, it's a lithograph, it's an engraving, it's an etching, you know, um, just to put the timeline back further, or whatever they want to do with it. But they can manipulate it. So these things that we see in pictures that we take as historical documentation, basically, is very subject to manipulation, and was used for that purpose, to make us believe certain things. And they continue that to this day, of course. They look at NASA and spaceships and all this garbage. It's all Photoshop things. They can make believe anything with a Photoshop picture, and they do it continuously, to the point now where that people don't even know that they're seeing things that are not even real. They to some people they can see it. Some people can see things that are obviously fake, but some people just they don't care to think about it. And if if so and so says it's real, then that's it. That's all you need to know. Then you need to see a picture, probably. Just somebody said it's real, and somebody said it's a picture of it. Therefore, there it is. Nobody has critical thinking anymore. Many sheep out there that just want to believe what they're told, and don't want to think outside the box. Don't want to think at all. Just want to be told what to do, told how to do, and when to do it, and everything else. That's hence the face covering people that they're actually been told now that that piece of paper is useless, because like everybody said that knew in the beginning, you cannot stop a microscopically sized thing going through a fishing net. The ability of the fibers to block this microscopically sized thing is impossible to do. It's going to go right through the size of the fibers. If they say it is what they say it is, if microorganisms are even what they say they are, you can only see it with a microscope. But the pores on the paper, 10 million microns, but this thing is 100 million microns smaller. Common sense is not going to, piece of paper is not going to stop it. It's just common sense. And right from the minute I heard that, it's like, you see a picture of these laboratories, and they have full-on covered head to toe and oxygen put into them, but under plastic, but yet a piece of paper is going to stop this thing from like a level 4 lab. Sure, but people don't no common sense, no thinking of any kind. The government says it'll help me, and it makes me safe, and it keeps grandma safe too. And that was a whole fiasco nonsense that started out with, keep grandma safe and wear this, and but you can do that. And what they did was just flat evil, keeping people away from each other, and people dying in the hospital or old age or even whatever, and they would keep you from their family, just all on this premise of protecting them and all this nonsense. It was nonsense, and they know from the start it wasn't never to protect nobody. It was just it was a control mechanism. It's a magic trick what they're doing. Ritual. That's why they did that. And that's, some people, like I said, the programming is very strong with this one or that one. It's just like they are like, and what I would call an NPC, a non-player character. They're just there for you to see that they're the compliant ones, and they say, oh, I should be compliant too because they're compliant, and they believe that, so I should believe that too. And that's what those kind of things, those people are for. They're probably not even conscious of that they're doing that. They're safe. I'm being safe, and I'm keeping my family safe, and I'm keeping my relatives safe, and I'm just I'm trying to do my part to be safe. And you've seen it with the whole thing. There people were really nasty about that, just like with getting the cure. If you didn't do that, then you're some kind of a bad person, and because you didn't want to do some kind of experiment with your body that they were running. And so they got really indignant and started calling you, a denier. Yeah, that's a new thing with the liberals. Call you a denier. You're a climate denier. You're a election denier. You're a vaccine denier. As though they're morally righteous from you for everything because you have an opposite opinion of what you think things are. So you're a denier and the thing that happened in World War II. If you're a denier of that, then you're really, that you get real canceled on that one. And now like they did with Kanye West, and you start pointing out the obvious about things in the world and media outlets and who's in power and who's in charge and where it all goes back to and where it all begins. Yeah, they really don't like being exposed with that. That's for sure. You get way canceled and everything else. But it's all true. There's, they've been having their hidden hand in the pie for a long time. Not that they're the ultimate people behind it. I wouldn't even say they are. I just think they're another tool of the overall general system that's taken over this place from what it used to be. That's another video I'm going to make pretty soon about what it used to be and what it is now. How I feel like that we're probably the last generation, my generation, to actually live in a place that was good. And people talk about when it may have went bad, and in what way and how, when, what, where, and why. I think that I have some insight onto that. It's taken me many years to get there, but I think some of it's come clear now. Anyway, I think that's going to be it. I'm almost at 1 hour here, and so I just want to talk about the election, because I said I would come back and talk about that, and just kind of giving an overview of some of the other stuff. I'm going to do some more disassembling videos here pretty soon, but it got really cold here because it's winter, and I didn't want to do any of that right now, and I had just kind of sitting back and waiting and wanted to kind of look around and see what things would change. If not, which they didn't, of course. I mean, I knew that in the beginning, and I've been I'm starting to want to gear this channel more towards thought and the reality part of it and the recycling part of it, because I believe that I think that our reality is recycling, and it's just the same things that continue to repeat themselves, that these controllers, they use their same tactics over and over again. So they recycle their same plans, and we just do the same things, and we forget the last time we recycled through the same wash. So I want to kind of point out some of that stuff to go forward, and of course I will do more tear down stuff. I have a whole list of hoverboards and fax machines and vacuums, steam cleaners and tube sets and clocks, radios and stereos and car stereos, CB radios and recharging batteries, solar system, home security system, organizing. I have a whole thing of it, dishwashers, heaters, all these different things to take apart and kind of go into more of how they work and what they're the properties, how they will be done, how they operate in the future, and if you can repair them or whatever else. And so I want to do that kind of thing, and of course I'm going to do more of the reality part, and I'm going to push that more because I think it's more important than just tearing apart something and getting a few dollars out of it, off some metals or whatnot that are in it. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that, but I want to investigate more into how they were made, who made them, maybe what their first, how they came to be. I mean, some of them were pretty easy. We all know why a dishwasher was made, right? Or do we? Okay, that's it for today, and I'll talk to you guys again later. Thanks. Have a good day.